I'm Reza, and my family and me have been a member of this church since I was born. The people I have met here have always been there for me when I need it. For example, one beautiful summer day, my mom burst into the room and said, "Reza, get ready to paddle. We're going on a canoe digger day." A grin spread across my 6-year-old's face. I'd never been on a canoe before. I packed my water bottle and a pair of swimming goggles just in case and was ready to go. We met Terry, my mom's friend, at Raccoon River, the meeting spot where our friends from church had hosted this fabulous food fundraiser event. They were waiting for everyone to gather. Harvey Harrison and Ellen Taylor had gone to a lot of work to arrange this experience for the fundraiser. Mom and Terry had decided that they would be in a canoe with me since Terry and Mom had been canoeing before. They felt confident they could keep me dry. Couple one's canoe plunged into the river. Couple two's canoe bobbled after it. Now it was our turn. Mom was in the front seat. Terry tucked me in the middle with my fishing pole and backpack full of drawing paper, crayons, and etc. The water was moving very fast, and there were large boulders to navigate past first thing. We made it past the first obstacle, but boy was that water fast, and bam, we were in the drink. That wasn't the only problem, though. The pressure of the water had wrapped the canoe around the boulder. Terry dragged me to the riverbank while Mom swam to pull the floating things out of the water. We still had to deal with that canoe, though. Terry was a very tall guy. He walked over, grabbed the canoe, and gave it a pull. Pop! It flipped back into shape. The fishing pole was at the bottom of the river. The rest of us and our things were back in the canoe. Mom and Terry tried to reassure me, but my faith in their skills were extremely low at this point. There was now a small hole in our canoe that was letting on water. Harvey pulled up into his canoe and tried to console me. He gave me a sponge to hold against the hole. You couldn't fool me, though. I knew I was in a sinking ship, and I wanted out. Eventually, Donnie Fiddler and Doug Hoffman offered me a spot in their canoe that had a hole. I didn't miss 1 second in taking this opportunity. These were complete strangers, and I never left my mom before, but this case was different. I spent the rest of the day with Donnie and Doug. There was no way I was convinced to rejoin my mom in the doomed canoe. The moral of this story is, everybody in this church lets on some water. There are other members and families in this congregation who will give you a canoe ride if you just take them up on the offer. That's how everybody in this church stays dry.
I'm Karen Lauer.
I'm Mike Lauer.
We're here this morning to talk to you about stewardship. I know many of us cringe when talking about money, but stewardship is so much more than financial giving alone. We want to share with you our stories of how we've come to care so deeply about First Unitarian. I came to First Unitarian a couple of years ago, a disaffected atheist. I didn't want or need religion. I wasn't looking for faith. I figured this was the only place in town where an atheist could find community. And with my youngest heading off to college, I needed to expand my own social circle. What I found was not a comfortable social club, but at the risk of sounding melodramatic, transformation. I always thought spirituality was for hippies and New Age gurus. Chalice lighting? Meditation? Yeah, right. I joined Wellspring last year for one reason only. Tracy invited me, and being new, I figured I'd better not say no. Gradually, as we explored the sources of Unitarian Universalism, I began to see myself and my beliefs in a different light. Not only did I discover my own spirituality, but in deep connection with my group, realized the value of opening myself to differences of thought. I could live my life looking for similarities instead of arguing differences. What one person may call God, I call simply the wonder and awe of nature.
I became a member of First Unitarian to grow in community, and because I wanted to participate in some of the social justice activities. I had no idea what lay ahead. I stepped in. The personal growth opportunities were enormous. Through book groups, the Restorative Justice Group, the Other Side of the Coin workshop, circle training, witnessing whiteness, Wellspring, writing as a spiritual practice, and family promise, I've grown. I've begun to recognize my white male privilege and how that affects my place and responsibility in society. But more importantly, I've begun to know and appreciate many people in this church. I'm frequently in awe of the thoughtful commitment, of the passion and nuance so many of you bring to the church and to social justice work. I'm humbled by our history. I'm galvanized by what we can do moving forward.
I'm still an atheist, but I'm also a believer. My faith, Unitarian Universalism, calls me to action and personal growth. And perhaps most surprisingly, First Unitarian restores and replenishes my soul.
When we consider what this church means to us, that it is here, what it is, what it can become, when we consider our financial situation, we want to give so we notice it. Each month, we make our pledge as an automatic payment. It is not impersonal. Each month, we notice the transfer, and each month, our commitment is reaffirmed.
As we consider our pledge, we look not only at what we have received from First Unitarian, but as an investment in the future we all will share. And that's what stewardship really means, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Please consider your situation, what this community means to you, and give as generously as you can.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Lance, and I'm the only person I know of who became a Unitarian Universalist by virtue of divine revelation. That's right. It came to me in a dream. So let me back up and give you some background. I had two very different college experiences in my youth. I started at Drake in the fall of 1967, and then transferred 2 years later to Earlham College, which was a small liberal arts Quaker, very liberal hippie kind of place. Drake at the time felt to me like a very, very traditional place, and I did all the things that I was supposed to do. I wore my hair in a perfect flip, which was the style at the time. I wore carefully matched skirt and sweater outfits, and my skirts were exactly the length that they were supposed to be according to 17 magazine that fall. I went to class, I made good grades. I was elected to the freshman council. I did makeup for theater productions, and I participated in campus activities. I went to a lot of fraternity parties. I drank a lot of beer. I had fun and I made friends. I had a boyfriend. But I felt that everyone there, including me, especially me, was playing a role. There was not much overlap between the people that I knew in my classes and my campus activities and the people I partied with on weekends. Everybody kind of stayed in their own lane. And I felt like the priority for a lot of my classmates was the parties and the beer. Now, I don't mean to disparage Drake. I came back to Drake to go to law school, and I've had a lot of real positive experiences there since. But this was my experience when I was that particular age, at that particular little slice of time in history. And at that time, I felt like much of the time I was sort of standing outside of myself, watching myself, trying to fit in and conform. When I got to Earlham, there was this totally different energy about the place. Everyone there was passionate about something. Some of the things they were passionate about were serious, and some were just plain goofy. But everyone seemed to be engaged in something. I had friends who were passionate about folk dancing and spelunking and theater and music and horses and poetry and geology. There was one guy who was absolutely fixated on making the perfect popover. And my roommate dated 2 different philosophy majors who wanted to be shepherds so that they could sit alone and think deep thoughts. Of course, there were a lot of us who were passionate about social justice and ending the war in Vietnam. But there were all kinds of people who were just all mixed up together, and that was students and faculty alike. Nobody was putting much energy into being cool. I felt energized and free, like I could finally be me instead of trying to fit into some other kind of a mold. I tried everything. I ditched the skirt and sweater outfits and wore blue jeans and this big, floppy, ugly burgundy hat that I somehow became attached to. I loved the feeling of being part of a learning community. So now fast forward to 1988 or 89, can't remember exactly. I'd not been to church for a long, long time, but had appreciated the sense of belonging I felt in the Presbyterian church I grew up in. My daughter, Erica, was a toddler, and I wanted that for her and for myself as well. So I went church shopping. I visited a number of congregations and narrowed my search to First Unitarian and a large, prominent liberal church here in town. Then I had this dream. In my dream, I was at an event in this other church, and everyone was standing around drinking coffee. I was wearing a business suit, and so were all the other people there. I was chatting with people, making small talk. It was nice, but I just wasn't feeling it. So I left and walked home. Remember, it's a dream. And on the way home, I passed the Unitarian church. There were a lot of people there who were putting on a play, and they were very, very focused on painting sets and doing stuff with costumes, and nobody paid much attention to me, but they were all just really into what they were doing. And I said to myself in the dream, the first church felt like Drake, and this one feels like Earlham. Now, I hardly ever have coherent dreams. But this could not have been clearer if God were talking to me out of a burning bush. My conscious mind was weighing programming pros and cons, but my unconscious mind knew that this place here felt authentic and real. I've now been a member of First Presbyterian, never mind, First Unitarian for nearly 30 years. At times I've been very active, projects and committees, teaching Sunday school, stint on the board, a term as president. At times I've been less active. I've certainly not liked everything that's happened here or agreed with every decision that's been made. But through it all, I believe my dreaming brain was right. People here are engaged in a search for meaning. They're passionate about serious, important things. And like Earlham, some are passionate about some things I think are kind of goofy. But I have been awed and inspired by the people I've met at this church. Thoughtful people thinking about and doing interesting things, people who are making a real difference in this world. So what does that have to do with the stewardship drive? Well, I really want the spirit of this congregation to continue. I want this place to continue to be here in the future, for me and for others. There needs to be a place that's free of dogma and instead challenges us to seek truth. There needs to be a place that challenges us to put our values into action by working for social justice. And sadly, that won't happen without money to keep the lights on and pay the staff. We're going into another transition next year when Mark moves on. I've lived through 2 ministerial transitions, and so I know that, although we may not want to, we're going to survive this one too. But the kind of minister I hope we can attract is somebody who will be looking for a healthy, vibrant, committed community. And that makes this drive particularly important. So I'm going to increase my pledge this year, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
I came to First Unitarian Church of Des Moines on a Saturday in October of 2014 for a concert. This was a familiar place, as I had been here for other concerts in the past, but this time it was different. This time I was not the person I had been the last time I had sat in this hall, or maybe I was who I had been all along. I was broken. My marriage and career were over in the blink of an eye. I was trying to keep my relationship with my 2 adult sons intact, new job, new living conditions, relationships in turmoil, uncertainty abounding, exiled from my previous religious community. Yes, I was broken. The concert was great, and I was leaving, and I thought, maybe I'll come back tomorrow and see what it's all about. And I came back, and came back, and came back. I found community here. As a 50-year-old gay man who had recently come out, I needed that community. My outing was not a clean, clear event, but mired in hate, hurt, and complete mayhem. Having worked for a church for 7 years prior and being an active member of that same Christian community for almost 30 years, I was convinced I would never be part of a religious community again. So what changed for me? The people of First Unitarian, they changed my mind and my beliefs about religious community. You see, I thought churches just talked about the work that needed to be done in the world and threw money at it. But here was a church actually doing the work, the hard, relentless work that this broken world needs. I was amazed at the willingness of people to participate and display complete, unabashed conviction in their core beliefs. I wasn't an official member, but I decided to make a monetary commitment. I thought, if a church is not just passionate about their own well-being, operating, and staff salaries, but about the well-being of others, count me in. My pledge was small to start, but I felt compelled to help this community continue to do the work necessary to make the world better. And then there were soul matters. You all know who you are in that group, and you have to know that I love each of you for what you brought to the group and what you gave to me particularly and personally. You showed me that this church, any church, what it can be and should be at its best. Loving hearts, strong shoulders, tear-filled eyes, and listening ears. It was you who convinced me to become a member of this church, not by your prodding, but by your presence. There were so many other individuals who opened up to me and were just present, and for that, I am ever grateful. In this church, I found grace, acceptance, fellowship, music, and yes, love. For me, it's all here. It's all here. So, what about you? Your story is different than mine, to be sure, but certainly you have some of the same needs that I did. More importantly, the needs of this world are ever changing. So how do we all engage in the process of being present? Physically standing with those who are marginalized, standing shoulder to shoulder with them, adding our strength and voices to theirs. There is much work to be done. But one piece is simple: making a financial commitment to this church. And please know it matters. So friends, church is not a spectator sport. It is all in, full contact, and sometimes it's messy. Agreed? But, oh, what a beautiful mess it can be.
Good morning. My name is Janine Chowdhury. My husband Ahmed and Amal, my son Reza, was up here earlier today. I've been a member of this church since 2004, and I'm currently serving as a religious ed representative for the Council for Congregational Ministries. So a few months ago, I was on my way into Des Moines to meet with the council for the first time. It was a dark weeknight, and it was cold, and I was late. I had left the dinner table and had lingered too long in conversation with my family, and now I was late for the first meeting. I hurried into the church, through the halls, and rushed to open the door to Mark's office where the council was meeting. There was one chair left for me. The meeting continued, and I took everything in. I could not get over the overwhelming gratefulness that I felt. It was the people in that room that I couldn't get over. Sally Buchholz was there. She's always stepping up in RE, and I always know my kids are in good hands with her. Bill Paxton was there. We sang together in the choir when I joined a few years ago. That choir was my respite when I needed to heal a little bit on the inside, and we do have the best music. There was Reverend Stringer. How many sermons I've listened to that made me a better person, made my family better, or just left me singing a happy tune as I left the church parking lot. Ellen Taylor was there. She had been to my home, and I had been to hers, as well as on canoeing trips with her. Liz Bredesen, I knew her from many years before when she had stepped up to host a cottage meeting at her home. Aaron Gingrich was there too, and we had planned a full day of service projects together. I was overwhelmed with the gratefulness there in that room. Where would I be? Where would my family be if not for this church filled with these people? When I first joined this church, I knew the purpose in my mind was to have a place to reach past my nuclear family, a place to grow by serving for the greater good of the community. I wanted a place that both my husband and I could feel comfortable attending together and eventually with our children. What I have given is a sum that pops up on the e-banking site, and I like to see it there beside the mortgage and everything else. It's the foundation I am building. This month, Ahmed and I will be increasing our pledge by 20%. What I've taken from this place is the strength my heart needs against injustice, a place to make me strong enough to stand up for what's right, and a place to find people to look and learn from at this time, and that's priceless.